I'm aware that many of you have expressed a desire for online counseling, and to that effect, we have a sponsor who will help you and assist you in that respect. So if you will, go beneath the video, you'll find a link to our online counseling sponsor. They have a whole team of counselors that can help you. Practice self-care, get the help that you need. There are all sorts of scenarios where you can have some initial positive impressions with other individuals, and it seems as though that relationship might be a very uplifting kind of a thing for you. For example, it could be inside of your work setting where you're working on projects with someone, or inside social scenarios or organizations that you belong to. It could even be with individuals inside your family, and you can have some good exchanges. But over time, a larger question can emerge in your mind, and that is, how far can I trust this person? Is this somebody that I could give full disclosure to? Is this somebody that could come deeper and deeper into my personal circles with? And that's a very important thing for you to ascertain, because trust, of course, is one of the bedrock ingredients of healthy, deepening relationships. Right now, I want to go through 10 different ingredients that I want you to watch for that might imply that a person that you might have an initial positive impression with may not be as trustworthy as you want. So let's get to it so that we can get a gauge as to how you might interact with other individuals. Now, the first thing that I like to watch for is how superficial an individual might be with their personal disclosures. Trust is built upon allowing one another to know each other from the inside out. And there are some individuals you realize over time, they don't really reveal a lot about what's going on the inside. I mean, it could be something like you notice that they had a reaction, and you may ask the person, hey, why did you respond to your sister that way? And you're just kind of talking to them. And it's like, that's just sort of the way that we interact with each other. And they don't really get too deep into it. Okay, what they're doing is they're saying, I don't really like to engage in personal vulnerabilities. I don't like to talk about what's on the inside of me. And it can be all sorts of other kind of things. It may be why they work on a project as diligently as they do, or why they don't work on projects, and what's going on in their thinking. And they just continue to give you superficial responses. That's their way of saying, don't get too close to me, because I just don't do that kind of stuff. A second indicator that a person might not be very trustworthy is there are some individuals who just seem to have an inability to learn from their mistakes. You know, you've heard it said, you can learn a lot by the mistakes that you make. Well, many individuals who are not really trustworthy, it's like, I don't like to talk about my mistakes. I don't want to admit that I make mistakes, or if I do, I'm going to brush it off. And you notice that they tend to do the same negative or inappropriate things or non-productive things over and over, and they don't receive direction well at all. And this is their way of saying, I just want to be an island unto myself. I don't like to exchange and engage in an insightful way with other individuals about who I am. And I'm thinking, okay, good to know. A third indicator that a person might not be terribly trustworthy is individuals who give lots of unsolicited advice, but then interestingly, they tend not to be all that eager to receive other people's input. For example, when something happens, that individual may say, well, you need to do this, or I think you ought to try such and such, and they're very free in letting you know, here's the way I think things ought to be. And yet, when it comes time to doing some brainstorming where you think, well, there are a lot of different angles we need to look at here, it's like, no, I already told you what you need to do. And they don't really go much deeper than that. Unsolicited advice is their way of saying, hey, look, there's one person in the room that kind of knows things. It happens to be me. Why don't you just do what I tell you? And then that leads to a fourth indicator that a person might not be trustworthy when you pick up on the fact that they can be easily critical. You'll notice, I mean, we all have some things that we don't like or we don't care for, and we may comment on it here and there, and that in and of itself isn't necessarily a huge red flag. But there's some individuals who do that way too easily. It's like whenever they see something, it's almost as though they're obliged to say, let me tell you what's wrong with that one. Or this person over here, let me explain to you how defective they are. And they go to that place of criticism far too willingly and far too easily. And it's just one of those over and over kind of things. And of course, I'm thinking, okay, I'm probably next. Or what are they saying about me behind my back? Criticism is an indicator that trust is not something that you want to necessarily hand over. A fifth indicator that a person might not be fully trustworthy is that they can be generally evasive or coy or vague in terms of revealing their plans and their activities. For example, it may be that you'll say something to the effect of, hey, I've got thus and such going on this weekend. What about you? It's like, I'm not really sure. And then you realize, that I'm not really sure seems to be a very consistent response that they give over and over. And you don't really know where they're going or who they're with or what they're up to. That's their way of saying, I want to keep a tight control about how much of me that I reveal. And you just don't really need to know that much about me. Okay, another thing, good to know. A sixth indicator that a person may not be fully trustworthy is that they can be fair weather friends. Now, when I say fair weather friends, they're there for the good times when the games and the laughter and the pleasantness and the food is good and all like that. When all of that is there, it's like, yeah, sign me up. But then in the midst of difficulties or strains or troubles, it's like, where did they go? I always say crisis reveals character. When you're in your moments of crisis and then someone shows up and says, here I am, how can I help you? Okay, that's somebody I can trust. But when you're in a moment of crisis or there's a difficult thing that you're wanting to process and it's like, I don't know if I want to go into that. It's like, okay, so what you're saying is let's keep things shallow. I'm catching on. A seventh indicator that a person may not be fully trustworthy is people that have consistent inconsistency. Do you notice, of certain people that they may say, okay, I'm gonna do such and such this weekend, and then the weekend comes along, it's like, I thought they said they were gonna do that and they didn't. Or I'll give you a call tomorrow and then check on things, and then that call never happens. Or they make plans and then they're constantly late, or they don't really follow through on things, or they wait till the last minute to get things done. That's what I'm talking about when I say consistently inconsistent. Trustworthy people, their word is their bond. Some individuals, it's like, well, my word, it's fluid. I'll follow through if and when I feel like it. That's a sign of lack of trust. An eighth indicator is the routine mismanagement of anger. There are going to be circumstances where you can feel frustrated and tense and agitated, and sometimes you can just get downright angry. That just doesn't shock me that somebody has moments where they have their anger. Now, what I want to do is I want to watch and see, well, how do you manage that? And when people go straight into the rudeness or the condescension or the forcefulness and the harshness in their anger, it's their way of saying, deep down, I really don't respect people, especially if you disagree with me. You can tell a lot about an individual's maturity in the way they manage anger. You can still, in anger, stand up for yourself and your convictions, but you can maintain a certain diplomacy about it and a decency, and people get to walk away with their self-respect still intact. Non-trustworthy persons don't think that way. A ninth indicator that a person might not be trustworthy is they may like affection and affirmation, but then over the longer period of time, you realize that they're not really that encouraging or kind in general. In other words, they like to be the good time person, let it all roll. Yeah, come and tell me how nice I am. But when it comes time for you to have a sensitive response from that person, where there needs to be a tenderness, or they get in with strong empathetic skills, and that's missing, that implies that there's kind of I'm only here when it makes me feel good mentality. And then a 10th indicator is non-trustworthy people like to talk about their successes They like to talk about the things that make them distinct and unique, but they really won't go into much detail at all about their failures. We all fail. We all have moments where that wasn't my greatest situation there. And the deeper you get to know people, they're going to be willing to say, yeah, let me talk to you about what that was about. Non-trustworthy individuals, it's like, no, they either blame other individuals if their failures come out. They can have shame about their past, and therefore they just can't work through it. They tend to put shame on other individuals, and they can't really reveal who they are. They can't be honest about those negative aspects. But like I say, that's just part of our humanity. So let's recognize that trust is built upon openness and honesty and self-disclosure and accountability and approachability. And some individuals can be pleasant and friendly up to a point, but they can't really go into that deeper level. And I'm hoping that you can read these kind of things that I've mentioned and know that there are some people you can only engage with them up to a certain level, but you kind of have to keep your walls of caution up. Now, one final word of admonition or encouragement that I want to give to you is the best way for you to know if another individual is a trustworthy person is for you to be that fully trustworthy individual, because that gives you a good gauge to measure the rest of humanity by. And I hope videos such as this give you some good food for thought and cause you to have that insight into yourself and into other individuals. If you've not already hit the subscribe button to this Dr. Les Carter channel, I would invite you to do so, and we'll have more videos that keep coming. You know, I already have my Surviving Narcissism channel as well. If you have a need for counseling, we have an online sponsor that could assist you in that way. If you have somebody in your immediate area that you get counseling with, I would certainly encourage that. But if online counseling is what you're after, we have a sponsor that, and we have a link below so that they could introduce you to an entire team of individuals that could help you unpack some of the things that might be required there. In addition, we have my courses like my Free to Be course and others that are on the way, and webinars that we'll be producing from time to time, and my books, etc. So make sure you take advantage of the resources we have below. Trust is such an essential ingredient in healthy relationships. I hope that you have a good handle on what it takes to be trustworthy, and you understand what non-trustworthy people might be like. And in doing so, it positions you to be a person of steadiness, and hopefully it can keep you in your place of peace.